Welcome back to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit. For decades, Canada's defense posture ran on a familiar setup. NATO commitments on paper, the United States as the primary drivetrain, and Europe sitting quietly in the background. That configuration began to change in late 2024 and shifted decisively by December 2025. Without press spectacles or political noise, Ottawa executed one of its most consequential strategic moves in generations. This isn't just a diplomatic footnote. It's about capital, manufacturing capacity, industrial leverage, and long-term influence in a world where security and production lines are deeply interconnected. Here are the developments, the implications, and the outcomes you need to understand. Canada breaks in, inside Europe's defense inner circle. When the news broke, it stunned almost everyone. Canada had been admitted into the European Union's Security Action for Europe, SAFE, becoming the first and only non-European country ever allowed into the EU's flagship defense financing and procurement framework. This wasn't symbolic access. SAFE sits at the heart of Europe's rearmament push, backed by roughly 150 billion euros in loan financing designed to rapidly scale military production. The timing is critical. Europe is racing toward a 2030 defense readiness target amid Russia's continued aggression, repeated drone incidents near EU airspace, and growing uncertainty over long-term US security commitments. SAFE is built to close urgent capability gaps: missiles, ammunition, drones, air defense, cyber, and space, using long-term, low-interest EU-backed loans. Canada's inclusion rewrites expectations. The UK failed to join, Australia didn't qualify. Even the United States remains outside the structure. By gaining access to Europe's defense planning ecosystem, while committing early to NATO's 2% spending target and adding $8.7 billion in new funding, Canada signaled it no longer intends to remain on the sidelines of global defense supply chains. But breaking into Europe's inner defense circle raises an obvious question. Why Canada, when other major allies were left out? Why Europe chose Canada? Stability over superpowers. The immediate question was obvious. Why Canada? Behind closed doors, European officials kept circling back to one word: predictability. In an era of election-driven policy swings, sanctions uncertainty, and sudden trade restrictions, Canada offers long-term stability. That matters when you're planning defense investments with 30 to 45-year lifespans and financing structures that include decade-long repayment grace periods. Europe needed partners unlikely to weaponize trade, impose surprise export bans, or abandon agreements after a single election cycle. Canada fit that profile. Beyond politics, Canada also brings a defense industrial base that quietly punches above its weight. While global headlines focus on US giants, Canadian firms specialize in high-value niches: battlefield sensors, secure communications, drones, robotics, armored steel, precision components, and aerospace systems. For Europe, that specialization reduces risk. SAFE isn't just about buying more hardware. It's about diversifying supply chains so procurement doesn't hinge on one country or political capital. And that trust doesn't just open doors, it unlocks money, manufacturing scale, and long-term market access. Before we go further, do us a favor and smash that like and subscribe button. It helps Piston Pundit reach more vehicle and industry enthusiasts just like you. Now let's shift gears and look under the hood of how SAFE actually turns trust into hard industrial power. Inside SAFE, the money engine powering Europe's rearmament. SAFE isn't a grant program, it's a financing engine. The EU borrows collectively on global markets using its AAA credit rating, then lends those funds to participating governments at cost. For buyers, that accelerates procurement. For suppliers, it removes financing uncertainty and speeds production timelines. For Canadian defense manufacturers, this changes the game. While SAFE projects typically require at least 65% EU-based content, Canada negotiated exemptions allowing Canadian firms to contribute up to 80% of a system's value in specific cases. That's an extraordinary concession for a non-EU country. It means Canadian companies can move beyond minor subcontracting roles and anchor entire systems, especially in high-demand areas like drones, counter-drone tech, missile components, ammunition, and advanced sensors. With EU defense spending projected to exceed €1 trillion over the next decade, SAFE locks suppliers into long-term production pipelines, triggering new investment across Canadian facilities from aerospace to advanced metallurgy. But rapid expansion at this scale almost always runs into resistance, especially inside a politically complex bloc like the EU. Europe rearms fast. Politics threaten to slow it. SAFE may be accelerating Europe's defense build-out, but it's not operating in a vacuum. Inside the EU, familiar tensions are resurfacing over who sets priorities and who controls the purse strings. The European Commission favors centralized flagship programs, such as continent-wide drone shields or integrated air defense networks, while heavyweight states like Germany, France, and Italy prefer coalition-driven projects anchored in national industries or NATO frameworks. For Canada, this matters. While SAFE funding is locked in, the shape and speed of individual projects remain fluid. Some initiatives may stall under political friction, while others could accelerate rapidly as Eastern and Northern EU states push for urgent capabilities after repeated Russian-linked incursions. Still, the underlying trajectory is clear. Europe is rearming, bottlenecks are severe, and suppliers that can deliver reliably, on time, and at scale will dominate procurement decisions, giving Canada a level of visibility and influence it never had before. And that growing influence feeds directly into Canada's broader strategic reset. Canada repositions, breaking free from US dependence. For most of the modern era, Canada's defense ecosystem revolved around one gravitational center, the United States. More than 70% of defense spending flowed south, binding Canadian manufacturers to US supply chains, standards, and procurement cycles. SAFE doesn't sever that relationship, but it fundamentally recalibrates it. By embedding itself inside Europe's defense architecture, Canada gains leverage and optionality. It can balance partners instead of relying on a single one. That shift mirrors broader global trends, where middle powers are hedging against uncertainty rather than choosing sides outright. Canada didn't force its way in. It didn't threaten. It didn't grandstand. It was invited. And that invitation signals long-term confidence in Canada as a stable, dependable industrial and strategic partner, arguably the most valuable asset in today's fractured global system. Which brings us to the final takeaway, and why this move matters far beyond defense. Verdict: Canada's quiet leap into global power. This wasn't just another defense agreement, it was a strategic repositioning. By joining SAFE, Canada gained far more than access to contracts or financing. It secured relevance, a seat at Europe's defense table, direct exposure to procurement decisions that will shape military technology, industrial capacity, and supply chains for decades. Yes, challenges remain, costs will rise, political debates inside Europe will continue, some projects will face delays or redesigns, but the direction of travel is unmistakable. Canada is no longer reacting to global shifts after the fact. It's helping shape them in real time. In a world defined by supply chain fragility, industrial competition, and geopolitical uncertainty, this move stands out as one of the most consequential decisions in Canada's modern history. And fittingly, it happened quietly, until now. Now, over to you. Will deeper integration with Europe strengthen Canada's defense industry long-term? Does diversifying away from US dependence make Canada more secure or more exposed? And could this model be repeated in other strategic sectors beyond defense? Drop your thoughts and experiences in the comments. If you want more deep dives like this, subscribe to Piston Pundit so you don't miss the next vehicle updates and upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. You can now check out any of the videos on your screen. There's plenty more to explore.